This project combines spoken word storytelling with facilitation practices to create connection and enliven healing energy. It is currently in development. Rick Feltington of the Earth, storyteller, process artist, and agent of change, is telling the story he has crafted called The Prophecy of the Great Brightening. Alison Fornes, systemic constellations facilitator, trainer, and author of the upcoming book, The Knowing Revolution, a manual for evolutionary educators, how embodied knowing and relational intelligence will change the world, is facilitating an interactive guided process that allows people to embody aspects of the story. This is the second excerpt from the reading entitled Grandfather. To get the full effect, please watch part 1 first. The Prophecy Project envisions a traveling production with actors and musicians that weaves drama with movement and community connection practices to bring healing and rejuvenation to our world, making it easier for us to fully see and hear each other with the eyes of the heart. Also in development is a component web application that gamifies connection practices online, creating a ritual event each new moon to help shift the communication paradigm, creating space for each soul expression to emerge, helping to move humanity toward an experience of shared power and the birthing in of a new cultural operating system, where needs may be more easily expressed and met, and innate gifts more easily shared. To support this vital work, become a patron at patreon.com/Rick Feltington. Patrons receive access to monthly readings and constellation sessions, as well as a monthly call to generate coherence and activate flow. To get the fullest experience of this work in progress, come to a live reading offered online through video chat on the new moon. The next one is offered on November 7th. So I left you with the many questions that were asked by the many amongst the scattered tribes in Evermore, once known as Andali. But it is grandfather who must also be spoken of, who had different questions to ask, who lived not in Evermore or Andali, but here on earth, in our time, with you and with me. Grandfather, that is what many called him fondly, with his long white hair and a certain twinkle in his eye, who had become well known for the gatherings that were stewarded on his land, which had become renowned especially for its magical sunrises that felt all the more magical after the celebration and the ceremony that was shared by all who attended. The people who gathered there would often say that they are the brightest, most magnificent sunrises that the world has ever known. They will tell you, playfully, that the purples are more purple, the orange is more orange, the pink's more pink, and the yellow more exquisite than any other sunrise. The place is beautifully kept, structures molded and embedded into the landscape, the gardens serene, the horses, the peacocks, the llamas, the cows, all at ease in the morning, making the morning sounds. From time to time, when a reporter arrives to inquire about the origins of the land, about what inspired this now 20-some-year project, grandfather would often laugh and smile. "Oh, you mean the messenger," he would say. And when the reporter would ask whether grandfather was speaking of Yahweh or Allah or Jah, or the god or goddess or Buddha or some other deity, grandfather would laugh again, invite him or her into his small adobe home, pour some tea, and point to the picture of his granddaughter, Decca, perhaps the one of her when she was 5 years old, in a butterfly costume, or the one of her talking with her favorite horse, Frederick, or the one of the two of them, years later atop his favorite mountain, now fully grown, each smiling and holding their matching crystal necklaces in the glimmer of the sun. She came into my life, he would say, and that changed everything. I was broken. I felt great remorse and pain for what I had been involved in, for the pain it caused in the world, and the pain I caused my own family. She gave me a reason to go on. When she looked at me, she didn't see any of that. She looked with the fresh eyes of the heart, with love, with innocence. Like that, he would say, pointing toward the beaded tapestry that hung on the wall with the heart woven between two eyes. She reminded me of play, of the human spirit, and the infinite ripples, he would say. The infinite ripples, the reporter would ask. In everything we do, he would say, in every moment, if we breathe, if we listen, if we do things with love, with intention, there are infinite ripples sent out that cannot be stopped, that science cannot measure, that flow on for eternity. With this, he would often wink and then go on. Now, that was what often happened, but this particular day that I must speak of was different. Though the sun did in fact rise in all its majestic beauty, as those who frequented the land might say, and though grandfather lay in his serene home next to his beloved partner Grace, he awoke nonetheless abruptly, startled, in great pain, sweating, terrorized by what he'd seen and experienced in his dream. For it was true for grandfather as it is for many who can attest. We are all connected on this planet, yes, it's true. The energy that flows through me, it also flows through you. Yes, grandfather stumbled out of bed on this morning, startled, sweating, holding his head and then his side, screaming out in pain, terrorized by what was still being seen and experienced through his dream. His partner, Grace, now also awoke, looking on with great concern. Ah, he cried with images flashing still in his mind, the stick of sage held up in her hand, the crowd gathered, and then the pepper spray, and the pummeling of clubs, and the piling on of people, and the smothering of breath. He saw the crystal necklace he had given her flung into the air, shattering into a million pieces on the ground, and heard the sounds of the screams of those who witnessed the scene unfolding. The phones held up, the madness recorded and broadcast through the internet. He felt even the pain of all whose eyes took in the moment, of all the innocents that died. Ah, he stumbled out the door of his home into the land, his bare feet touching the earth. The facade of time now broken open as he falls to the ground, gets up and falls again. He can see before him on the land as he moves about his 5-year-old granddaughter and the moments they enjoyed, each memory alive as if in present time, the two of them blowing bubbles, skipping rocks, dreaming up stories by the stream, the images appearing for him but disrupted, his consciousness skipping back and forth, the ensuing shrieks of mayhem and a pain that screamed in every fiber of his being, the commotion, the clubbing, the yelling, the beating. By the time he stumbled his way over to the calming stream, he heard the ring of his phone. Ay, 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 ay. Moments later, Grace arrived with his phone in her hand. It's your daughter. It's Felicia, she said. Grandfather takes a breath, splashes water on his face, and gathers himself. Felicia speaking from beside a hospital bed, the machines at work, the beep, 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 beep of them keeping her body breathing, the severely bruised face of his granddaughter unconscious, her body there, her awareness somewhere else. Tears stream down his face as he listens on the phone. I know, sweetheart, I know. Those motherfuckers, exclaims Felicia, looking down at her daughter lying in the hospital bed. They're supposed to be protecting and serving. If you could see her face, Jesus Christ, of all the people, why her, why? Grandfather also in pain, but trying to be calm for her. He looks toward Grace, who takes the phone. We can pray if you want to, she says. Felicia nods, not usually one for prayer, but not knowing what to do, her face filling with tears. Grace sets the phone on a stone nearby set to speaker. Felicia, in the hospital room many miles away, sets her phone to stand on a book, sits back in her chair and continues, half in prayer and still half cursing the police, shaking her head and speaking into the air. Grandfather continues washing his face with the water of the stream as they sit beside it. Then there's silence. As they send over the phone, the sound of the water, the trees, and the sometimes calming breeze. It's not long before, in the water, grandfather sees Decca, this time as a 5-year-old, appear in the water. He looks over at Grace to see if she can also see what he is seeing, and she nods in agreement. She's there in the water. Tell me a story, said Decca playfully. as she had. This was, of course, the place where they often told each other stories, but grandfather did not feel that he could play in this way on this day. All he felt he could do was pray and ask the stream to wash away the pain of the world and save his little girl. But there was Decca amidst the stream, persisting, she often did. She was difficult to say no to, and she loved stories. After a story, she would often lift her arms and proclaim, "That was the best story ever." And sometimes grandfather would laugh and say, "But what about yesterday? What about the story that Frederick the horse told you? Or the one the great stone whispered into your ear the day before? Did you not say that those stories were the best?" "Yes," she would say, "those were the best too." And grandfather would laugh. But in this moment, he could not laugh. It was a brokenness that had returned, and he couldn't pretend it was not there. What good is a story to you, Decca? Now, I have failed you, and I don't know what to say today. I don't know why the Great Spirit would move in this way. "Ah," said Decca playfully, underturned, her image in the water. "But did you not tell me that time is merely a convincing illusion and that imagination is more powerful than we know? That where there is a will, there must also be a way?" And then with a smile, she looks down toward a toad sitting on a nearby stone, and with her hands touching her heart and then projecting outward, waving calmly, her fingertips twinkling lightly, sends to him a colorful stream of energy, which then, to the surprise of both grandfather and Grace watching on, as they see the toad's personality light up, as he smiles a playful smile, takes out a pipe, inhales, then exhales a puff of smoke. "Yes, it's true. I was just saying so to my good friend Humphrey," he says. And a slight smile appeared through grandfather's tears just for a moment. It had been quite an imaginative space that opened between the two of them. But it was too painful to play, and grandfather kissed Grace on top of the head and got up and walked away. Later that day, he couldn't help himself but to look on the internet at the YouTube footage of the incident that he could feel course through his body. It was now hundreds of thousands of people who had seen it. The tears came again, and when they came, it seemed like they may never stop. It was then that Grace picked up her phone and sent a message to all of the community that they had been there for over the years. "Please come," she wrote. "It's Decca. It's not good. We need you." That evening, with the community now too getting word of what happened, grandfather kept hearing the voice of Decca as a young girl. "Tell me a story," it said. "Tell me a story." He looked around the living room at the pictures of her with Frederick, of her covered in mud, with her face painted as a warrior, of her in the butterfly costume, of her at graduation with friends, and of the two of them atop the mountain. He prayed to the stars that night and spoke in an ancient language that had been taught to him. He sat near the altar with prayer beads in his hand, and in his dream on that night, it felt as if he was there, in that sacred land of the Shekinah, as if he were Imuna, warrior spirit, on a mission to retrieve the medicine needed for his granddaughter and for his people and for the great mother. He felt as if he were sensing into the colors, listening, aware of the beep, 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 the sounds that could be set off, as if he had found the broken crystals, brought them back to the group, as if he were there to hear the words of Tadathis and to see the colors transform over the castle. And he had the strangest feeling in that morning, that it was not his consciousness speaking to him in dream form on that night, but that it was Decca, in some other space of being, playing the game he had played so many times before by the stream with her. She would dream a story, and then he would dream one, and they would go on like that, communicating in a language formed through their unique bond. Could she have sent him that message in the dream world? He remembered seeing her in the water, and he could hear her request once again. "Tell me a story," she said. And as he awoke on that day, the dream kept speaking to him again. this time revealing in between the state of the dream and the state of being awake, amidst the fog between the two, a whole cast of characters he could see and feel who lived in Evermore, once known as Andali. He saw the wizard, eccentric advisor to the king. He saw Tzedekah, heir to the throne and central figure of a controversial prophecy. And on a faraway island, he saw Asan, the bringer of light, smiling in appreciative connection with the natural world around him. He glimpsed the wizard's appearance to Asan atop a mountain, handing him a crystal piece just as he had once given to his granddaughter. He felt the joy in Asan's being. And in that crystal necklace, it seemed, just for a moment, were the energies of healing, of transformation, of magic, of wonder, of a sense of fairness and justice that he knew Decca was asking for, that he knew had brought her to that protest which had landed her in that hospital bed. For a brief moment, when that appeared, it was as though he could see his granddaughter grown up and dancing again, as if her current condition could be reversed. It was as though he could see again, if just briefly, a vision of a world in harmony, as if the experiences he had had on the land could spread and flower and find a unity with other similar spaces and groups throughout the lands, forming a new network through which wisdom could replace the madness and division that plagued the people. And he saw in that dream Asan on the shore of a beautiful island, crafting a stone canoe that seemed as though it had been crafted with the blessings of the mountain, with the love of the surrounding trees, and with the great flow of the waterfall. And when the sun rose again in the morning and the colors of the sun could be seen, he and Grace made their way again to the stream, holding hands as they walked. She put the phone again on speaker, and Felicia and Decca, unconscious in the hospital bed, able to hear. Grace began beating a light drum beat, a calm, steady heartbeat to reflect the heart of the planet. Grandfather picked up a smooth stone, held it to his heart, and then up into the air toward the sun. He threw it gently into the stream and watched it float away, as if it were the very stone canoe that Asan, the bringer of light, might have used. May this story be one that heals, he said, for you, sweetheart, and for all.